Hello and welcome to the third instalment of our Better Future series, Paying Attention with Publisher First Party Data. I'm your host, Natalie Dawson, Sales Director here at the Ozone Project, and I'm going to be taking you through two of our favourite topics. So, firstly, we're going to be concentrating on the power of consumer attention, and then we're going to be moving on to one of our other favourite topics, first party data. First things first, I'm going to be handing you over to Lumen, who of course are one of the leading lights in attention measurement. They will be talking us through Ozone's extensive survey with them, attention paid to advertising across Ozone's premium publishers. As I'm sure you're aware, capturing consumer attention has long been the lifeblood of our publishers. And understanding this attention can offer great insight and opportunity for brands. This is particularly important as the third-party cookie continues to crumble. Accessing first-party data has long been on the minds of every brand, every marketeer, and every agency out there. And we spend a long time talking about this with our clients. That's why for part two, we'll be focusing on Ozone's key USP, first-party data. This session will be led by Lazenby, our lead strategist. She's going to take you through a live demo, a walkthrough of Ozone's Insights tool. This is all fueled by that publisher first-party data, which is so rich. But first things first, let's get back to part one, and let's kick off with Mike Follett, Managing Director of Lumen Research. We're really excited to share this information with you today and in fact launch this study. So over to you, Mike, who will give you lots of information.
Well, thanks very much for that introduction, Natalie, and thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about some new analysis that we've done on the understanding the value of premium publishing environments. My name is Mike Follett. I'm the Managing Director of Lumen Research. For those of you who don't know much about Lumen, we're an eye tracking company. We've developed some technology that turns this webcam here or this webcam here on your phone into a high quality eye tracking camera. And that allows us to do very large scale studies of the reality of attention to pretty much anything online, including advertising. We use this data to help brands and publishers measure and buy and sell attention. And we work quite a lot on the buy side of the equation for people like Tesco and Chanel and Adidas. But we also work for the sell side as well, working for publishers and platforms and format owners, trying to help them understand the value of the attention that they create for clients. The data set that I'm going to be talking to you through today comes from our UK-based panel. It's 1,000 people in the UK, about 750 on mobile and about 250 on desktop. We pay these people £10 a month or so to download our software, which turns their webcams into eye tracking cameras. The data that we're looking at here comes from May, June, July, August, September of this year, and it's about a million impressions or so that have been analysed here. So it's a very robust data set here. It's also the sort of stuff that seems to be winning prizes. So this approach has been nominated for 2 prizes at the MRS and recently won an award at the Media Week Awards. Yeah, if you're into prizes, there we go. Why is this important? Well, the first thing to say is that and you may have perhaps guessed this before, but unseen is unsold. If you don't look at advertising, it cannot work. This is the sort of thing that if you were to tell your friends down the pub, they'd go, right, and you'll get paid how much to learn that? But it is true. Ads need attention to work. The challenge is that ads don't always get the attention that that you might think they do. There is a big difference between ads that are viewable and ads that are actually viewed. People's attention is selective. You don't have to look at everything that's put in front of you, and frequently people don't. Lots of ads that are technically speaking viewable don't actually get viewed. And even though ads may be viewable for a very long time, they don't always get attention that is at the same level as their viewable time. So this is really important to understand. And it's doubly, trebly important to understand because the ways in which we've been measuring advertising engagement up till now are sort of going away. Up until now, perhaps we haven't really had to worry about whether or not people look at the ads because the cookies tell us that the ads are working. Now, of course, I would probably say that attention has always been an important thing to do. And if your cookie data has been saying that your ads are working, even if there's no evidence that anyone's looked at the ad, then perhaps there's something wrong with your cookie data rather than the attention data. But it is something that people have been relying on and perhaps blindly relying on, and it is going away. Thanks to GDPR and CCPA and the impact that that has had on Apple and Google, this reliance on cookies has ended for most advertisers. Cookies are going away, and so suddenly contextually targeted data is far more valuable. When we talk about the contextual targeting data that Lumen provides, we tend to think of it in terms of an attention funnel. At the top of the funnel are impressions that people could possibly see because they reach the screen. Not necessarily 100% of the pixels, and not necessarily for 1 or 2 or 3 seconds, but they do reach the screen. And that's the first thing for us to remember. No one could look at an ad that never reaches the screen. The second thing that we measure via our panels isn't just whether these things reach the screen, but also if they were technically viewable or not. We don't tend to take the technical viewability very, very seriously because it's a sort of man-made artifact. It's what the MRC, the Media Ratings Council, has deemed to be viewable, and that changes from format to format. So some formats it's 100% of the pixels for 1 second on screen. Others, 100% of the pixels for 2 seconds or what have you. And it's not a complete waste of time. It's just not as useful as working out what people actually looked at. Technical viewability tells us about the opportunity to see things, but what we're really interested in is whether or not anyone looked at all. And not just whether they looked, which as we call the sort of percentage of the ads that get looked at, but also how long they get looked at for. The view time is super, super important. As we'll see in a second, the longer that people look at ads, the more likely they are to remember and act on them. When we do this sort of research, what we found is that telling people that some of your ads get, in this case, say 9% of the ads have been looked at, or another way of thinking about it is that they've been looked at for 1.6 seconds. That's 2 ways of looking at the data, and then people can find that quite frustrating and confusing. What people like is to have one number to judge the efficacy of advertising, and they usually like that one number to be multiplied by 1,000. And so that's what we've done. We've created a measure to try and help people understand and compute the attention getting power of their advertising. So in this example here, you've got 1,000 people who for whom the advertising at the bottom here, the number 7 ad on the Evening Standard, could have possibly seen that ad. 51% of those impressions were technically speaking viewable, but interestingly only 9% of them get looked at, and then they only get looked at for about 1.6 seconds. Now this is entirely normal. It's a fine result. It's just quite a normal result. And if you multiply 1,000 by 90%, about 9%, you get 90 people see the ad, and they look at it for on average about 1.6 seconds. Then you're generating 148 seconds of attention per 1,000 impressions. This is important because what we need to remember is that it's attention that leads to outcomes. Not just in terms of recall, as you saw there, but in terms of sales. This is something that we've been working on as part of the Dentsu Attention Economy project, one of the world's largest eye tracking studies ever undertaken in both the UK and the US. Here we've got some data from the UK about their mobile tests. And what we've been able to see from doing lots of eye tracking tests and then a whole load of questionnaire data afterwards is that, well, unless you look at the ads, you can't really have an impact on recall. So by giving people a questionnaire test after doing a series of eye tracking studies, what we've been able to see is that people are pretty good at guessing whether or not a brand was in a test or not. So we get hundreds of people to go through websites and then ask them, do you remember seeing any ads for these brands, and from a list? It's called a prompted recall list. And it seems that from our tests, a good 19% of people were able to guess that I bet that Tesco was in a study, or I bet that Asda had ads on that page, and about 19% of people could remember or claimed to have seen the ads, even if the ads were not viewable or viewed in our tests. If the ads were viewable, but probably only viewed peripherally, then 27% of people remember that. And if they were viewed, but for the ads, only a quarter of the ad was showing, or half the ad, or if they were on screen for a very short amount of time, about 24% of people remembered those things. And all of that is within the sort of margin of error there. The thing that really makes a difference to getting people to remember whether your ads are on the page is making sure that your ads are both viewable and viewed. If you don't look at the ads, you cannot remember them. But if you do look at them, and you look at them for long enough to reach a sort of a threshold there, you're much more likely to remember the brands. Attention is the thing that links to recall. The same study with Dentsu also got people to choose brands after the test. We gave people choices of which of these brands would you choose to buy if you had the option. If people didn't look at, they couldn't see the ads and they didn't look at them, then the difference between the brands they chose was obviously minimal. They couldn't make a difference at all there. The same thing as if the ads were viewable but not viewed, just through peripheral vision or whatever, still very little impact on brand choice there. Similarly, if they were viewed but for a very short amount, for a tiny sort of fraction of the ad. However, if you look at ads that are fully viewable and you actually engage with them in a significant way, then that really does have an enormous impact on choice. And this is some of the most exciting data that we've seen that links attention, not just to recall, but actually to sales intent. And so it's with that in mind that the guys at Ozone got in touch to say, well, what are the drivers of attention? What is it that we know that attention matters? We know that it's rare. We know that it's finite. But what are the drivers of attention? And the hypothesis that those guys had was that quality attention to content leads to quality attention to the accompanying ads. It's a sort of intuition that we might have that people read the newspaper for the news. And so if you're reading the news intently, then perhaps you might look at the ads intently. But up till now, it's just an intuition that stands to reason, but hasn't been investigated thoroughly, and so that's what the guys had asked us to look into. And the results are really quite spectacular. And what we have found is that ads on Ozone do get an awful lot more attention than ads on other websites. The display ads and the video ads are more likely to be viewed. And crucially, they're more likely to be viewed for longer. As a result, that means that the aggregate amount of attention, that sort of attentive seconds per 1,000 impressions that we were talking about just a few minutes ago, is dramatically better on Ozone websites, Ozone sites than other open marketplace websites. Another way of thinking about this is not just that the total attention is much, much greater, but also thinking about how much, the proportion of ads rather, that generate 5 or 6 or 10 seconds of attention. Because as we will see in a second, the more attention leads to more recall. And again, it's quite interesting to note that certainly for say in this case, you can see here for video, that a good 15-18% of video ads on Ozone get over 5 seconds of view time, whereas on other websites, it's only around about 7% of those ads that reach that 5-second threshold. That's for other websites, but it's also possible to look at the same sort of data comparing Ozone to social media. And here the results are equally impressive. When it comes to display ads, it appears that display ads get looked at a little bit more on social media, but for video ads, more of the ads get looked at, and the average dwell time is pretty much the same for display, but dramatically better for video. People are noticing video ads more, and they are noticing them for longer. And I think when we saw this data, I found this quite reassuring, because Ozone, while it's brilliant in many ways, isn't perfect in everything, which might add to the credibility of this data set. But also, it makes sense to me that because you are engaged with the content, you are willing to hang around more to notice the ads and to notice them for longer. And as a result, when it comes to looking at the aggregate amount of attention, Ozone ads video ads get around about 140% more attention than their equivalents on social media, which I think is very impressive. I mean, the other thing to notice about this is that the differential between static and video is much greater when it comes to social than it does to the previous sites that we saw. Around about 12% of the Ozone ads get over 5 seconds of attention, whereas only about 4% of social media ads, video ads, get that, and that's quite an impressive difference, and even greater than what we saw for other websites. So that is good to know, that you get more attention on Ozone websites, but we're critical thinkers here. We want to say it's not just to say that you're doing well, but why are you doing so well when you buy ads on Ozone? What are the drivers of that? And there are many drivers here, and we don't have that long to speak, so perhaps let's just pick the top 3, shall we? Number 1, it's about content. Because people engage with the content more, so they engage more slowly with that content, and so the ads have more time to work their magic. People don't scroll very quickly on Ozone sites. Instead, they scroll a bit more slowly, and that has a dramatic effect on the attention the advertising receives. The second is that bigger really is better. This is not a situation that's unique to Ozone. You could buy big ads elsewhere, which is perfectly possible, and I strongly advise you to do so. But there seem to be fewer of the tiny formats on Ozone platforms that seem to have very high viewability scores, but very low ability to actually get attention. And then the third and final point seems to be about clutter, or rather the lack of clutter. The sort of fewer, better ads policies that Ozone members have adopted seem to be paying off. So let's investigate that a little bit more. The first and most important thing is this thing about content. Previous research for the IAB had a look at the difference between the way in which people engage with what you might call task-based sites and what you might call browse-based sites. This data comes from 2018, So it's a few years out of date here, but I don't think it's it hasn't it still holds true. Which is when people go to sites, perhaps to check the weather or the train times or something like that, their attention is focused absolutely at the center of the screen, and they don't tend to look at the ads as much around there. However, on more browsing-based sites, including news brands-based sites, people take much more time on the as they scroll around, and they seem to notice the advertising that is served next to that content. What we found in our analysis is that the insights from this research absolutely hold true when you look at it in terms of Ozone. Pages on Ozone seem to be read more intently. So for every screen of a phone screen or a desktop screen, people spend much longer on that screen when it's on an Ozone site but compared to other websites, and definitely in comparison to social media. They just read it much more intently. And what we've found is that the greater intensity of the engagement with the content, the greater the intensity of the engagement with the advertising. It's because people are engaged with the content on Ozone sites on both desktop and on mobile that they are more willing, it appears, to look at the ads. And here is the that composite metric of ad attention, attentive seconds per 1,000 impressions by the intensity of engagement per screen. Another way of looking at the same sort of data is that it's because people engage more intently that they also engage more slowly. So here we have some videos of sort of a typical Facebook experience versus a typical experience you might have on an Ozone brand site. And I think this is all our own experience, isn't it? You read a bit more slowly, you're interested in the article, you're far less likely to skim in the same way. And as a result, the ads have time to breathe and time to load and time to get noticed. What we find is that scroll speeds on Ozone sites tend to be much lower, especially than social, but also compared to other websites. And another way of showing the same data as I saw before is to have a look at attention to ads by scroll speed. So the longer that people take to go down their phone or scroll down their computer, the more attention they'll give to the ads. The final way of thinking about the same sort of thing is simply to look at viewable time for the ads. And here I think we have an interesting way of looking at the viewable time for the ads for both display and for video. And here it appears that other websites actually can sometimes generate more viewable time than Ozone. And we know that more viewable time tends to lead to more attention in general. But what's interesting from our data is that Ozone sites seem to convert that viewable time into actual attention to the ads a little bit more cost effectively, sort of efficiently, rather, attentionally efficiently than other sites. So it isn't just about viewable time. You can't just use your viewable time metrics and be done with that, because then you might miss a load of the value that you're getting from Ozone. There's more to it than just viewable time, but that's quite a good place to start. The second big reason that we found that seems to be driving Ozone success is because bigger ads get more attention. Size matters when it comes to ads across everything. And like I say, you can buy big ads from other places. You don't tend to buy as many small ads, and it just seems that the average ad size that you buy through Ozone is just a little bit bigger than other websites. And the same is here with when it comes to mobile, where the Ozone ads do seem to be just a little bit larger than other websites, but not quite as large as the coverage that social sites get. And so again, what we see here is something where you can't just use ad size as a proxy for attention, because while Ozone averages a little bit larger ad units than other websites, they actually tend to be slightly smaller than the social average, certainly for mobile. Social ads are brilliant because they take over the whole of the screen, but people skim much more quickly there. So it's not one or the other. It's both. And again, it does seem interesting that ads on Ozone sites seem to be slightly more efficient at converting not just time into attention, but also space into attention. And one of the drivers of that might be down to lack of clutter there. Ozone sites tend to follow a fewer, better ad load model, where they don't try and have hundreds of ads firing all at the same time. And that, of course, has quite a big impact on their ad yield. There are pages out there where you have ads all firing at the same time. And that's 10 times the income for the publisher. Ozone seems to have foregone that strategy, but that is a good thing for advertisers, because what we see is that for every ad that you have on the page, you probably get less attention. If you have fewer, rather than less than, fewer ads per screen, each one gets more attention. So if you have one ad every 4 screens, then you might get sort of 790 attention seconds per 1,000. If, on the other hand, you have 4 ads firing at the same time per screen, then you get dramatically less attention for each ad. So it is important to try and go for soulless positioning on pages. People only can look at one thing at a time. They simply can't look at 10 ads at the same time. And so going for this fewer, better ads model seems like a very good plan. Looking at the sort of ad load per page is quite important, because Ozone seems to have fewer ads per page. This is, I think, a slightly unfair slide for social media, because they essentially have an infinite page. So they might have 6 or 7, hundreds of ads if you have a long session there. On average, it's about 6. For Ozone, it's about 3 per page. This is quite important. It's not as important, as we saw, as the ads per screen. And here is where social media, you can only ever have 1 ad per screen, and that is exactly the right sort of thing to do. You have an ad basically 1 ad every 3 screens on social media, and that's a good thing. Ozone sites, you have 1 ad every 2 screens or so there, which is still a very good thing, as we saw before. And other websites tend, not all of them, but there are more of those websites where you have many ads all firing at the same time, and that is probably a bad thing. In actual fact, one way of thinking about this is, if your best results are seen in terms of having 1 ad per screen or fewer, so 1 ad every 2 screens or 3 screens or so on. What you can see is that almost all social media companies follow that approach, and that is the right thing to do. But it's quite close behind that is Ozone. From our data set, around about 90% of all the ads that we collected from these panels were served in a soulless or less frequent position, and that compares quite differently to the other websites where you do have many more ads per page. So to conclude then, what does this mean? We started off by saying, that not all ads are created equal. People are very good at ignoring ads in general, but it seems that ads on Ozone sites do particularly well, and the same ad can be served on website A or Ozone site B and will get more attention simply because of the context that it's served in. So not all ads are created equally. Some of the drivers of why we're seeing this positive performance for Ozone are probably down to the quality content and therefore the quality engagement, and therefore the quality of the ad attention. And the drivers of that are down to time and size and clutter. Ads on Ozone sites have more time to breathe, and so more time to work their magic. They tend to be bigger, and therefore take up more of the screen and then much more likely to be noticed. And they tend to be served in a solus position, so that people have a choice about whether to look at the content or to look at the ads, rather than having to compete for attention across a number of ads. And that's about it. So we'd be really excited to work with Ozone on this. It helps us put some, numbers behind intuitions that we've all had for some time about how the quality of media and the quality of journalism affects the quality of attention to advertising. And we've been really pleased to work on the project, and we'd be very happy to talk to any of you about more of the deeper findings on a one-to-one basis. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mike. That was excellent. And the second time I've seen it, both times blown my mind. Particularly noteworthy is Ozone Video, of course, and we received twice the attention of that of other websites or social platforms. The last time Mike presented this, he actually said, "I don't know what Ozone is charging you, but they should be charging you double." Mike said it, not me. So on to our next session, where we'll be focusing on first-party data and our view of publisher consumption patterns. In fact, Boston Consulting's group report, The Dividends of Marketing Maturity in 2019, found that sophisticated marketeers understand that first-party data is differentiating, because of course no one else has it. It's relevant, refers to the company and the customer, and is consistent and high quality because it comes directly from the source. BCG agree that use of first party is critical to better understanding of consumer behaviour and delivering more tailored and meaningful messages to customers. Needless to say, we apply that kind of thinking here at Ozone and in our use of first party data. So I'm going to hand you over to Frances Lazenby now, who is going to give you much more information on that. Over to you, Frances.
Thanks, Natalie, and hi, everyone. I'm Frances. I'm the lead strategist at Ozone. A key element of my day-to-day role at Ozone is working with internal and external teams like yourselves to put data and insights really at the forefront of all of the work that we do. And that's the main reason why I've been asked to come along and talk to you guys today. So Ozone Ad Manager represents a significant step forward for us. And really, it's a core focus both in the immediate and longer term. What you'll be seeing today then is really the first step towards Ozone Ad Manager as a full service planning, buying and reporting platform. At this initial stage then, the majority of the tool is focused on data and focused on helping you better understand your audience through insight. So for example, their age, their gender, when and how they're engaging, and what else they're interested in as an audience. So when it comes to the data that's fueling the platform, then, as you'll all know, at Ozone, we are in the privileged position that we are first party to our publishers. So really think of us as an extension of their businesses. As a result of this direct relationship, we're able to collect fully compliant first party data that's comprised of real world reading behavior at national scale. As an alliance of multiple publishers, we are the only partner then that can offer a single view of a deduplicated publisher data set. At Ozone, we talk a lot about a 360-degree view of a user. And really what we mean by that is people don't necessarily engage with news brands online in the same way as they do a paper. You know, loyalty manifests itself very differently in the digital ecosystem. Really, instead, what we might see is, you know, someone jumping on and reading the latest travel destination review on the Telegraph, and then a couple of days later, they're on the Mirror reading about the latest Corrie gossip, and then perhaps, you know, following the weekend, they've gone onto the Sun to read the pundits' reviews from the weekend's football matches. The reason this is important from a data perspective is because, for example, the mirror alone may only see this user as a TV addict, a Corrie lover, and perhaps therefore not relevant to target that user for your travel brand. But actually, because we have that full view across all our publishers, we know that last week they were on the Telegraph and read 3 articles about summer getaways with the kids. So actually, this is a really important user to target for your client. With that in mind, then, really what this represents is a move towards you being able to empower your own planning and buying with the same all-seeing, all-knowing data set that we use at Ozone for insight, to fuel our reading the nation, and on all of your campaigns to date. With that kind of, anyway, with all that in mind, I think it's probably enough talking about it, and now let's jump in and do the live demo. Okay, great. So when we open up the platform, this is what you'll be met with. You'll see here you have 2 avenues for which you can explore your audience, based on demographic data, so a combination of age and gender, or based on interests. Given that interest and behavioral targeting really is our sweet spot at Ozone, I thought that would be the best place for us to use as an example. So when you click down on interests, you'll see here we have our full list of top line segments, and within each of these there are multiple sub-segments for you to explore your audiences. I figured COP26 obviously just started, very much in the news, and an important topic to a lot of consumers at the moment, so that was probably quite an interesting place to start. So if we use green solutions, for example, here, you'll see then perhaps for your particular brand, for this campaign, you might think, okay, I know I definitely want to target this audience. I'll explore them a little bit further, but I definitely know that they would need to be targeted. So we can immediately save that segment, and you'll see that appear over here in the audience creator, as well as an estimated monthly unique figure. So from here, then we can go into view insights. And at this point, you then have 2 overall tabs. You have the who are they and what are they reading. If we start with who are they, then at this point, you can see just the top line audience metrics. So unique users by month, week, and day. We can see age and gender here as well. So these are all indices. So how is this audience, these people who are interested in green solutions, how do they compare to our overall Ozone audience? We can see here, actually, it's an interesting split, skewing slightly older, and also skewing slightly more likely to be female. And then finally, we can see device type, how green solutions audiences are consuming the editorial across our publishers. Unsurprisingly, this is a mobile first audience. Pretty much all of our audiences are, but actually if we then compare that to the average kind of Ozone's total audience, or the average user, we actually see a significant under index for mobile. So this shows that clearly includes sort of mobile first formats on plan, but there's definitely still a role for really nice high impact engaging desktop formats in your planning as well. Once we've understood who they are, then we can then have a look into what else these audiences are interested in, or what in this case they're more likely to be reading. And here we can see that these green audiences is immediately a huge over index for shopping content. Now that poses a really kind of interesting opportunity, perhaps for FMCG or any kind of retail brands that have green credentials. It shows that this is clearly the right kind of audience for you to be targeting. We can drill further into that again, actually, by going further and saying, okay, what is it specifically within shopping? Shopping is obviously a very broad segment. What is it within that that is of most interest to these green audiences? And we can see that sales and promotions is immediately coming out on top. I guess unsurprising, we're coming up to Black Friday, Christmas just around the corner. People are starting to look out for a bargain. Once we've kind of understood this audience and how they're indexing, I always find when I'm doing any kind of data mining, it's always useful to cross-reference the indices with actual volume, just to check that the insight that's coming out is robust and it's actually viable for targeting in terms of volume. So that's where we can go into most viewed content. And this is purely based on page views at this point. So we can see straight away the bar here, how their attention or total page views is being split. And interestingly, we can see that actually shopping is still coming up as one of the top viewed topic areas for this audience. So we can drill into that again, just to cross-reference the sales insight that was coming out previously. And we can see again, some other things have cropped up. So for example, grocery shopping has jumped up, but sales and promotions is still definitely a key segment for us to target alongside our green solutions. So now we know that, we can be quite confident to add this into our audience creator, and you can combine these two behaviors. Over in the audience creator, then you can decide whether you want the user to have read both green and shopping content, or just one or the other. Now, I think I'm quite keen for them to have read both, but obviously do bear in mind that will impact our deduplicated estimated monthly unique figure. Here you can also then decide the extent to which you want the user to have read shopping content. So they have to have maybe just read a few articles, or do they have to be reading above average number for this segment? Once we have that, then just going back over, we can see these last two tabs here. So most read articles kind of provide some of the context behind all of the sort of attention that's being paid to shopping content at this time. So we can see here top articles by page views or by relevance. So the articles that are highly relevant to shopping, also still driving some pretty significant volume. And then finally, how is shopping content being consumed across the week by our green audience? We can see here it's fairly flat, but there are definitely some kind of areas where there are more kind of peaks and troughs. For example, there's a definite shift between lifestyle content and business content and how that's consumed. For example, business was obviously quite a big one for this green audience as well. And we can see the shift here immediately moves more towards the mornings, more towards midweek, and massively skews away from Saturday, and in particular away from Sunday. So then once we've kind of understood our audience and we're happy with the combination we have in the audience creator, it's at this point that we can save that. So we'll put in here green shoppers and we can save that. And then we can either continue to explore or we can go through to create a campaign. So as I said at the start, the majority of the tool at this point is focused on just the insights, but there is still this element here where you can go through to request a campaign based on the exact audiences that you have just been exploring. So here we can add in our green shoppers. You could also add any other audiences perhaps that you want to target, healthy families in there. And then we click next. And it's at this point where essentially we are looking to replace the kind of briefing email that we have traditionally. This obviously, as I said, allows you to request to activate the exact segments that you've just been exploring and that you've created yourself. So it's at this point, you just input all the key details, the campaign name, advertiser, budget, date range, objectives, importantly, whether or not this is deals or managed activity. And then when we press next step, I won't actually do it because it does go through to the sales team and they'll probably get very excited. But this will then take you through and will be sent through to your sales rep, and also if it's a deals campaign through to your ops rep, where they'll be able to create a deal ID for you to then activate yourself. And that is the platform kind of in all its glory. Just a final thing from me then. Just talking about what's coming next for Ozone Ad Manager and what you can expect. For me, one of the most exciting things about Ad Manager is the fact it's continually evolving. This platform only launched a couple of months ago, and we've already added loads of new segments, loads of new features, and there's lots of other big updates to come. One of the most significant is the introduction of content insights. The existing tool that you've just seen obviously allows you to explore insights based on audiences and behavior. This new section then will complete the puzzle and allow you to delve into a range of content topics and explore longer term consumption trends across all of our 1,200 topics that we have available. As well as telling you the most consumed topics right now and what articles are driving the most attention, you'll also be able to understand how the topics are consumed over time, drilling down beyond just the top line segments, down into the more niche subjects. For example, understanding the point at which a home and garden reader shifts from being interested in indoor furniture to outdoor furniture, or when the focus on Black Friday sales really starts to pick up. This excitingly is actually launching in the coming weeks, so do keep an eye out for that. Anyway, that's all from me today. Conscious I rattled through that fairly quickly, so if you have any questions at all on Ad Manager or on our data set, do get in touch. I'll be happy to talk to you about it in a little bit more detail. Thanks so much, everyone. Back to you, Natalie.
Thank you, Francis. Well, that's it. We hope you've enjoyed the third instalment of our Better Future series, focusing on paying attention with publisher first-party data. I'm going to give you 3 top takeaways because we have covered quite a bit of content. Okay, number 1, premium publishers are incredibly efficient at capturing attention, and that attention clearly relates to attention to your advertising. That's what we're all here for. Number 2, Ozone offers more attention to your advertising than other websites or social platforms. Most noteworthy, of course, is video, with 2 times the attention. And then number 3, we're in a very, very privileged position of knowing what the nation is paying attention to. That is thanks, of course, to our single view of reader behaviour from 99% of all UK adults. And Francis talked you through how important and how powerful this insight really is. That's it. We hope you've enjoyed the session. And of course, please do get in contact for any more information. I and the rest of the team would absolutely love to help you. My email address is Natalie at the Ozone Project at ozoneproject.com, but you can get in touch with me or any of the rest of the guys, and all of us would love to help you. As I mentioned, please do head over to Ozone's website, ozoneproject.com, where you can access this content as well as our previous 2 episodes. And we have also the accompanying white papers there. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great day.